Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crimson Daggers Crimson Conversations. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. If you haven't, it's just a bunch of interviews we do with professionals working in the industry, and hopefully we can provide you guys with a good amount of insight so that you guys can get a job and be beautiful people.
Mm-hmm.
But this time we got Sean Murray. He's a very good man.
You guys probably know Sean's work. His handle on the forums is Muttonhead.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes. Hi. How's it going?
Thanks for coming on, man.
Sure. Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Oh, if you don't know, Sean's done a bunch of stuff. You worked on Lord of the Rings Online, D&D Online, Ultima Online. You worked for Big Huge Games, 38 Studios.
Yep.
Cartoon Network, Toonami, Legend of the Five Rings, all this stuff that I saw on your CG Hub page that I'm repeating.
All kinds of stuff.
All of that true to some degree.
Actually, if you guys don't know, I'm going to link you guys to his CG Hub.
Yeah, and Sean's just coming off of doing his Kickstarter for his book, and that was ridiculously successful.
Yeah. I in the last seconds of the campaign, I reached the my final stretch goal of 25K. So
yeah, that was crazy.
Really
cool.
And I just want to let the viewers know we're not doing this to be mean or anything. I just want to let you guys know that because of the chaos we had with the Dan Levisi interview, if you guys remember that, the chat was just out of control, crazy stressful. So we're not actually going to be reading the chat. We got a lot of questions covering all kinds of stuff. So we think we'll hit most of the questions you guys will have at one point or another, but we're not going to be reading the chat just because it was ridiculous last time.
Okay, so let's just get started. Sure. The usual sort of questions. When did you get started just doing all this, art, whatever else, starting out and learning how to do everything?
Well, I mean, I took art classes in high school, and I always liked drawing, but I didn't really think I could do anything with it professionally, maybe until I went to college. And initially I went to Syracuse to study computer graphics. That's what the major was back then, what it was called, and it was a lot more technically oriented. It was a lot of programming and
when was this? Like around what times?
That would be 1994.
Oh, okay.
When I went to Syracuse. And so digital art, was really kind of still mostly focused on 3D stuff, and there wasn't a whole lot of digital painting going on back then. There was some, but and I had done some stuff in high school, like on Autodesk Animator or, some of those early painting programs, but, just dabbled with it. So I guess in college is when I kind of thought, hey, I like drawing and painting, and, maybe I'll be an illustrator, maybe I'll be a concept artist, or maybe I'll do comics, or, so that's kind of when I guess I caught, that bug in particular.
So did you sort of come to that realization from the school itself?
I guess so. A lot of my professors were professional illustrators. Actually, they all were.
Uh-huh.
And a couple of them sort of encouraged me to do stuff in the comics realm, or, in some more entertainment design. Although there weren't really any professors there that I had that knew anything about entertainment design, concept art. They were mostly focused on editorial illustration and book illustration, which, I kind of dabbled with a little bit, but, I wasn't sure if that really was my thing or not.
Yeah.
But it would be several years after that before I realized that concept art really was the thing I wanted to do. But I've always done my own personal work and stuff. So.
Oh, cool. So aside from school and your professors, did you have any difficulties trying to convince anybody that this was going to be what you did for a living? I know a lot of people have big problems with family, even like friends, trying to tell them this isn't something you can do or holding them back or anything like that ever happened to you?
Honestly, no. I mean, I think my mother probably was the most practical of everyone. She's a business person, and I think she worried about me, whether or not I'd actually be able to make a living doing this.
Yeah.
But, ultimately, I think she trusted me and, supported me. My father was very supportive. My whole family was supportive. They just didn't understand me because I was very different than most people in my family. Most of my brothers and sisters are very athletic. And not that I, sit around the house all day, but I wasn't really that focused on sports. Most of my brothers and sisters were. And like I said, my mother was a businesswoman. My father was a home builder. So, I was the only one that was really interested in art. And I think my mother's father was an artist, but he was, he was an amateur artist, and it was something that he had aspired to do. But then eventually he had to take over the family business. The story was that he actually went out to California at one point and had met with people at Disney, and they wanted him to do backgrounds, but he was out there on vacation or something, I think, and then he ran out of money, had to go home, and then his father was like, "Hey, look, you've got to continue the family business here." So, so that was really the only person that I knew, and I never really knew my grandfather. So, I didn't have anyone in my family that was artistic. So I just kind of was forging my own path, and everybody was, supportive and kind of amused by it, I think.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, like, that's always a kind of like, I feel like that's sort of a typical thing that, like, you hear a lot about is people holding people back, but to even have support from, like, having people just involved in, like, business, and especially, like, family business, it seems kind of rare that's, something they'd support, arts and all that, but that's really awesome. And I was just going to say, I know Dan in news, he sort of shares a similar design aesthetic, and I know you wanted to ask him about style.
Oh yeah. I really I love the way you incorporate patterns and textures and all kinds of influences from Art Nouveau to all kinds of other things in your work.
Sure.
And I was wondering, was that always a fascination you had even when you were younger, or was that something you developed over time? Like, basically just like, how important was style in the beginning? Was it always something there that was kind of ingrained, or did you pick pieces up as you went along and kind of adapt?
It was definitely the latter. I didn't, it wasn't until I discovered, guys like Muka and Ian Miller, who's one of my favorite illustrators, who did a lot of stuff for Games Workshop and other sort of turn of the century type illustrators that did a lot more line work. It wasn't really until I discovered that kind of stuff, like in college and after college, that I sort of got into the more patterny kind of stuff and the highly detailed stuff. I think, early on I just thought, well, I like drawing, so I draw robots and dragons and dudes with guns, basically all through high school.
It's a big three. That's the high school trifecta.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what you do.
It's funny because I still have my old sketchbooks from back then, and I'm just looking through and I'm like, yep, there's a dude with a gun, there's a dragon, there's a robot.
Robot dude with a gun fighting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sure. In variations thereof. But I was into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, as a kid, and video games. So I always liked that stuff. But when I think it may have been late high school is when I first encountered Games Workshop and some of the illustrations in their books. And then, I liked that stuff, but I didn't really know how to do it. And then in college, like one day I was kind of drawing my sketchbook, and I just decided to draw this weird house, that had these vines growing through it, and it was sort of lifted up off the ground, and it was kind of this little aha moment for me when I sort of drew all these little noodly details, and started getting into the patterning of the architectural details and stuff. And it just, I don't know, it felt right. And so from there, I just always have been sort of chasing, or maybe not chasing, but always been sort of I try to get to that state in my work where I'm kind of zoning out a little bit. Mostly in my personal work is when I'm able to do that. But I try to do it with my professional work as well, because I think sometimes it shows in that when you put a little bit of yourself into your personal work, I think it just makes the quality better. It's not always possible, especially with ridiculous deadlines and meetings and all that nonsense. But trying to get there, a little bit, trying to bring a little bit of yourself into your work every now and then is, I think, really important. So. Yeah, I mean that brings us to another question we wanted to ask. I'm very interested in this. I think some other people probably are too. In the wide spectrum of all the things that concept art can be, on the two extremes, there's the very realistic, and then there's the very stylized opposite that. And increasingly, as a field, concept art is getting more realistic, more realistic, more realistic. A lot of the stuff is looking very similar in a lot of ways. And I didn't know if approaching the problem of being a concept artist with such a heavy hand for style, has that been beneficial to you? Have you had to kind of fight against it? Is it something you can turn on and off from job to job? Does your professional work necessarily have to look different from your personal? That's a really, really good question. I would say that it probably doesn't do me a whole lot of favors for my work to be stylized, but I kind of, I guess the best way I can put it is, I don't know that I'd want to be doing work that didn't feel like I could put a little bit of myself into it. And I know that one of the things concept artists, they say concept artists should be is to be well-rounded stylistically and be able to adapt to lots of different styles. And I do think that I can do that, right? But there are certain styles that I'm just not that interested in, and so it makes it a little harder to, let's say, find jobs or find the right project. But when you do find the right job or the right project, it makes it that much more satisfying. And that is a decision I think everyone has to make personally. Some people really like, doing all kinds of different stuff and trying their hands at different things and going for ultra realism. And that's cool. And there are tons of artists that do that kind of work and that I'm very impressed by. But I know that I wouldn't bring anything, I think, interesting or different to it if I tried to sort of put myself into that sort of mold, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I have something more to say in the sort of stylized fantasy realm. Now, I think that can be a very open-ended thing, right? I mean, fantasy, to me, is just the existence of magic. So anything that has that element of magic to it, I think can, be something that I'm potentially could bring something, interesting to, right? So it is hard. I think when you make that decision early on, hey, I'm going to go for this look, and that's going to be my look, then you kind of have to prepare yourself for, not every studio calling you back or being interested in your work, because they may be looking for something very specific. But that's why you have to send your resume to 100 different studios,
right.
Until you find the right project.
That's a good point. When you're developing your work, another question kind of akin to that, a lot of the way you're drawing and the way you're coloring, especially with your palette choices and things like that, it's very akin to very golden age illustration kind of stuff. And especially, I noticed a lot when I've known your work for a while now. I've noticed a lot of maybe influence from like Arthur Rackham in particular.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was wondering if at any point, whether in school or prior to, especially, 1994, the digital scene for art wasn't really there, like you were saying. It
Right.
was there, but in a small degree. Did you work with any traditional media, be it ink wash, watercolor, acrylic, oil, anything at all like that before you started getting into the pencil with digital effect kind of thing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That, in fact, my entire college education was traditional media, and we did have a digital. There was like a few digital art, illustration classes I took, but like one of them focused mostly on Illustrator, using Illustrator, and actually maybe I only took one class, and the person that taught it didn't really know a whole lot about it, and all she really knew was how to teach Illustrator.
Hmm.
So so um, so I had to kind of teach myself the digital stuff afterwards. But yeah, in college I took traditional painting classes, so I learned how to paint in oil, even though I hate it. Um, uh, my thing was I really liked watercolor and pen and ink.
I could tell.
It gave me the effect that I was looking for. And the other thing I could paint in was acrylic. I hated oil painting. I know a lot of painters and illustrators think I'm crazy when I say that, but I don't know. And hey, look, everybody's different, right? And to me, I hated the drying time thing. Like, and I had this sort of sense that I wanted that immediate, feeling of, it's done.
Yeah.
Or I could get it done, fairly quickly, because I have a short attention span. And oil painting to me just didn't seem like it lent itself to short attention spans. But I know there are different methods you can use to get it to dry quicker. Sorry, quicker.
Yeah.
Um,
Quickie.
but I don't know. And also it was messy, and
Yeah, I hear you.
there are gloves and all this
We
nonsense.
got lots of preparation.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just, it just wasn't for me. The watercolor pen and ink thing. See, and that's the thing is I don't think of myself really as a painter. I think of myself much more as a drawer. I like mark making. I like drawing lines. Line work.
Yeah.
That's my thing. That's the thing. That really inspires me and makes me want to just sit at my drawing table for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Is making marks. So I had to develop a method that I could take my drawings, and then make paintings out of them. And that's how I arrived at the current way that I work. Initially, I worked it out, with traditional media, watercolor and acrylic. But now I can do it digitally. I still occasionally do, traditional media.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling, I haven't done it in a while or something, and I'm just inspired. So.
Well, that's cool. I mean, your work is probably one of the best examples of that watercolor mentality translating into Photoshop. It works really well, especially with some of the transitions and palette choices and things.
Yeah,
I like that.
and that's why Arthur Rackham appealed to me, but also guys like Gustave Doré, who did these amazingly detailed line work pieces, and more recently, like I said, Ian Miller and also Bernie Wrightson. Like I just love their line work, and
Oh
that's
God, Bernie Wrightson's insane.
yeah.
He's
He is
crazy.
So anyway, so that's the stuff that really inspired me, and so I had to catch up a bit once I got into the industry when it came to color. I kind of perfected my color skills as a professional concept artist.
Mm.
Oh, that's cool. So, as far as actually, you were talking about how particular your style is and how you send your portfolio and everything off to everybody,
Yeah.
so that you have a better chance. Like when you first got a job, were you tailoring it to any one company, or were you just doing your style, or had it not fully developed into what it is now? Like, was it different, or were you trying to be like what the company was, or anything like that?
I think all of the above. I took some time to research who I was applying to. Now keep in mind, this is after, I had lived in New York City for a while, worked in web games, done some stuff for Cartoon Network and Lego.com and all that stuff, and I'd done the advertising thing, earlier than that, the web design thing. So, so by the time I got around to applying to actual game studios for concept art jobs, I had a portfolio that had a bit more of a range. There probably were some robots in there. There probably were some futuristic guys, but I think it's mostly because I had found this little startup game company in Brooklyn where I was living at the time, and did some concept art for them. It was kind of a semi-futuristic thing, so I had a variety of things to show, but I had obviously a lot of fantasy stuff as well, and it just so happened that the one, probably I think the one and only studio that called me back in that round of sending out resumes was Turbine, and Turbine ended up being my first real concept art gig, professional gig, and I think it was mainly because the art director at the time, I'm not sure if he was considered the art director or the lead artist, but anyways, this guy named Mark Holmes, who's today remained a very good friend of mine. He connected with my work because he was also a line guy. He liked line work and watercolor, and that's how he worked. And he saw something in my work that clicked with him, and he's the reason that I got a contract job with Turbine initially, and then once I kind of proven myself through the contract position, I came on full time. So I think in that case, it was just I knew they had done a fantasy MMO in the past. I sent them more fantasy oriented portfolio, and that's what did it, I guess. So
okay, so that was your first full time.
Yeah.
And you were...
I mean, before that... Well, no, it wasn't my first full-time job. It was my first full-time concept art job in, AAA games.
Okay.
Like, so previous to that, I had done stuff for web games. I was a game designer and artist for a firm in Manhattan whose main client was Cartoon Network. And then after that, I was a contractor, and I did some stuff for Lego.com and the Lego magazine, so...
Okay, so you worked, did you ever work like a long period of time doing just freelance or anything like that?
I did, actually. When I got laid off at Funny Garbage, it was actually when they lost Cartoon Network as a client. That's when they had to lay a bunch of people off because it was their main client at the time. Unfortunately, it was the day I got back from my honeymoon. So that was fun. Which was also about, I guess, a couple months after 9/11, and living in Manhattan, so it was a very weird time.
Everything went downhill.
Yeah, to say the least. So it was a very strange time, and so I just decided, what the heck, I'll try to freelance for a while. I had some contacts in the web game business. Yeah. And so one of these companies needed some work for Lego that they were doing, so it just kind of worked out for a couple of years, but. I think it just, even though there are some advantages to freelancing, I think at the time I just didn't feel disciplined enough, and I was kind of living from project to project and waiting for those checks to come in the mail. You know what I mean? And so it was just a little too, having no money was a little too close to to home. Every couple of months. So I thought, well, maybe I really need to get back to a full-time type of job that I enjoy doing, so that I can build up more of a reputation and some more experience. Someday maybe I'll go back to freelancing, although maybe it'll be now because
we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, thing, but so we'll see. I think now I could probably handle it a lot better. But I'm still not quite sure if it's the time yet, But
well, I think a good amount of people know. I don't think it'd be too hard.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things. Like, you just get the ball rolling, and then once it gets rolling and you just know everybody, then it just happens.
Yeah,
naturally.
no, absolutely. And actually I've been contacted by several different places since the 38th thing happened. People asking me if I'm interested in some freelance work, and I'm considering it. There's a couple things I'm considering doing. So yeah, I mean, maybe it could work out, a lot better this time around if I decide to go that route, but I haven't decided yet. So stay tuned.
So before we get too far away from the portfolio and the style stuff, just one other question. Sure. I noticed with a lot of your work, and again, this goes back to, if anyone remembers, when we had the discussion with Kemp, we talked about a lot of people developing their portfolio approach it with this kind of divided attitude where it's like, well, I'm going to be the character guy, I'm going to be the background guy, I'm going to be the weapon guy, as opposed to understanding that you kind of need to know how to do all of it. Right. I've noticed with a lot of your work, one of the things I really have always liked about it is that you have these very, very lush and intricate and beautiful character designs, and then the backgrounds are also very lush and intricate and beautiful. These giant kind of amazing fairy tale cities with all different kinds of houses and minarets and spires and cathedrals and statues. And I wanted to know, was architecture always something you were interested in from the beginning? Because I know a lot of people, especially people that are character centric, which you seem to be, have a very strong fear of backgrounds. Or was that something you developed over time by having to do it? Because I've also noticed a lot of people start to love background design once they get a job that forces them to do it.
Yeah. That's a great question. And this is something I occasionally teach a class on character and concept design at Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA for short, here in Baltimore. And I talk about this a lot. Yes, the answer is yes. I've always been interested in architecture. Like I said, my father was a home builder, and so hey, look, it's probably no secret I was a nerdy kid. So I walked around. At one point I had, I would carry around graph paper with me, and I'd draw house plans and stuff. That was fun. You know what I mean?
Sweet, awesome.
But then in I would get, you could go into this is the other weird thing. If you go into like a Home Depot or something, they usually have a section of books, and a lot of times what you can get are these books they're just filled with different house plans. I loved those. Like I would buy those all the time and just pour through them, and look at all the different house plans.
Cool.
Very strange. But then what happened was I thought, well, maybe this architecture thing could be kind of cool. Maybe I want to be an architect. So I took a class in high school in technical drawing. We had a professor who was a professional architect and engineer, or engineer, I can't remember which one. I think he was a professional architect. And and he taught the class, and I realized it wasn't for me when I was, doing these technical drawings of the threads on a screw, and then we'd get, like, the final project was to do a house plan, but the restrictions were so horrible. It was like it had to be one story. It had to have 4 bedrooms. It had to have a living room that was at least this size and all this stuff. And it wasn't fun. And it's like, plus, there's a responsibility to it. I think architects have to be extremely responsible people and make sure that their math works out right.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's all about math, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, right. And I'm not, I could do math, but I'm not that crazy about it. So now, and I just get to design cool buildings, but not have to worry about whether they could actually, stand up. So what happened was, over time, I think I sort of was always just as interested in drawing architectural stuff as I was character stuff. And what I realized was my approach to both was the same. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand that when I say it. But when I teach character design at MICA, there's a class that's called just character design, but then there's concept design. Concept design is a sort of a wider range of subject matter. But character design, they want you to just focus on designing characters. But I always make my students do at least one environment in the character design class, because my point to them is that environments have just as much personality, if not more, than character does.
Especially in your work. I mean, I'm looking at like night fishing in particular. The city in the background is just like it's great. I just love all the shanty stuff and the boards over the old Gothic kind of building structures.
Well, I like that stuff too. Like it's like a lot of culture. Like the culture's in the character design and in the environment. Like so many people just put it in the character design, and there's a bland environment, and it's like, well, where is he from? Where does he live? You know, like what is that outfit he's wearing? And you know,
exactly. And you know, and the thing is, I think people don't. They need to sort of. I think you need to open your eyes to the things around you. I mean, I've lived in cities all my life, or near cities all my life, and you know, I would like to just sort of walk around and look at how things were built. I mean, New York City is one of the most incredible places in the world, and if you really take some time to look at it, you will start to see the layers of you know, things that have been built over time on top of each other, and because it's a constantly evolving place, right? And it is alive in its own way. So being more aware of that kind of stuff, I think, is really important when it comes to designing environments and designing architectural stuff. I mean, you know, natural environments also, you know, it's the same thing, right? It has personality. I mean, everybody knows what the Matterhorn looks like, right? Because it has personality to it. It's got a very specific look to the peak. So, you know, it's a matter of recognizing that and putting the same kind of techniques that you would use for designing your character into designing your environments.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I love all that old. I mean, like you go to some old medieval, or I'm sorry, old European towns and villages, and you see that mix of the old and the new.
Yeah,
I love that.
And we were in England. Like, yeah, we saw that firsthand. Like we were in England a while ago, and we saw some abbey that had been. The abbey was still there, but they'd built on top of it, and then built on top of it again.
Yeah.
So it was like this layered effect of like kind of like 50s buildings, and then underneath it was this like 13th century abbey that had just been there forever.
Yeah, man.
It was just really cool, but yeah.
Love that stuff. I really love that stuff. I mean, I guess, you know, I love architecture, but I hate, you know, like boring architecture, right? You know, like, you know, just a regular brand new box, you know, in the middle of a field, you know, isn't really exciting me. You know, it is definitely the stuff that's been around longer, or, you know, or has more of a story to tell, unless it's like this really innovative new kind of structure or building. You know, I mean, I don't know how practical Frank Gehry's buildings are, or how comfortable they are to work in or to walk around, but I do find it fascinating the way he designs buildings and the personality that they have. They're not all winners in my mind, but you know, some are quite interesting. So
cool.
So, you know,
well, that actually bleeds pretty good in this next one, where we were looking over your work and, you know, looking at your past work, and it seems like there's this sort of flow in all your personal work where they, you know, it felt like it was all in the same universe, the same world. Was that like just because that's what you enjoy to draw? Like, do you enjoy drawing that one specific thing, or did you have in mind that this would be one universe before you really started and did like your project with your book and all that?
I think I you know, it's a good question. I had always had the idea for Gateway a long time ago, and I think to some degree I felt, you know, oh, every now and then in my sketchbook I'm drawing something that takes place in the world of Gateway. But when I look back recently at some of my sketches, I realized that most of it does, and most of it is in that world. And I think it's just because it's something I can't, that I have to get out of my head, or that is always kind of haunting me. It's always there. And I'm not really sure where it came from initially, but it probably came from a lot of my, you know, various influences, things that I liked, and I just kind of developed it in my head. And I've always wanted to kind of solidify it. So over time, you know, I've always tried to find the right way to do that. And I've had lots of sort of projects that I've started and stopped that were related to Gateway, and it's just that uncertainty is the thing that's always kind of set in, like, oh, I don't know if anybody would like this, or how will I know if this is even interesting to anyone other than myself? So instead, over time, what I was doing was I was just drawing a lot of these things in my sketchbook and sort of building it over time that way. So I think it was half and half. Half the time it was a conscious effort, and the other half, I think it was just what happens when I'm drawing in my sketchbook. And I definitely try, and I encourage my students to do it all the time. I definitely try to take my sketchbook and go out and draw from life and practice things, use it for a way of practicing getting better as an artist. But at the same time, it's like, it's funny. I'm occasionally I would go to a figure drawing session, and everybody's standing around drawing the figure that's on the little stand there, and I often would get bored of that after about an hour or so, and I'd start drawing weird monsters or architecture or things, I'd draw the person, but then I'd draw them in Gateway, I'd draw them as a character in Gateway, so like, it's one of those things. It's just kind of an obsession of mine, and I sort of can't help it, I guess.
Yeah, that's that a question I really wanted to ask, and I'm sure a lot of people here might be wondering the same thing. Usually with personal projects, especially when people are either working for a studio or freelance, and what we all kind of do, there's not a ton of time, to work on a personal project. You can get some here and get some there, and over time build it up. But right. I think a big problem a lot of people have is not really having the confidence to know if the idea that they are passionate about is going to be something that other people are going to be passionate about.
Exactly.
And yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, and if anybody doesn't know, I'll just preface it with this. If anyone doesn't know and you're here listening and you're not sure what's going on, Sean recently did a Kickstarter to start his book about Gateway with all the characters and the city and all that stuff. And of your $10,000 goal, you got like 25,000. That's like 250% of your goal. That's awesome.
Yes.
So that was like a real success. So like, at what point did you have the confidence to sit down and say, okay, well, now it's time to actually really do this? Because things like you said, they linger for a long time.
Yep. A few things, I think. One was that I think about, I'm trying to remember how long ago it was. This is going to sound weird. This is the first time I've ever actually told anyone about this. It was about 8 years ago or so. I wrote myself a letter, and I put it in an envelope, and I sealed it, and I wrote on it that I was not to open this until I think December of 2012. And in it was I wrote what I expected of myself by that time, what my goals were for myself, as an artist, as an illustrator. And that time is approaching. that envelope can be opened, and I can read it and see if indeed I did the things that I had asked myself to do. I don't remember exactly what was on there, but I think there was something about, having published something of my own that was an idea of my own, or at least created a project that was of my own choosing, right, and was based off of characters that I designed. And so that, I think, has always been eating at the back of my head, and the other thing that happened was that I was just getting impatient. Yes, I spend a lot of time at work doing the concept art thing, but I'd always tried to reserve, at least an hour or two, maybe 3 if I was lucky, at night. Especially now that I've got a little one who you know who is awesome, and he's great, and I love being a father. I love having a family, but you know, the time that you have to yourself is much rarer, right? You know, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. And I think that too many people decide, you know, oh, okay, well, I'm having kids now, or I have a family now. You know, it's just impossible. I can't do my own thing anymore, and I'm just going to have to, you know, deal with it and just be okay with it. Well, I'm not okay with that, because I don't think that the two things are mutually exclusive, right? You just have to be better about budgeting your time, and you have to get rid of all of the stuff that is extraneous and not important, right? You have to decide what you're going to spend your time doing and do it. And so, and my wife and my family are extremely supportive of me, so that helps, obviously. So I was just getting impatient, and I heard about this Kickstarter thing, and last year I had decided, I wanted to come up with a book project, but I couldn't decide. I had 3 ideas in mind for a book, and I couldn't decide which one. I kind of laid a few of them out, took sketches from my sketchbook, laid out, what I thought would be kind of a cool flow for a book and a general idea. And then I put it aside because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to do. And I had this other idea for something else I wanted to do. It went off over my head. It's like, oh, okay. Look, I kind of have this book that I started, and I laid it out, and I wrote a little bit about it, and I have many of the illustrations are already finished. Most of them are in sketch form, but I could just put that together and make a Kickstarter, for this, and see what happens. And the rest is history, I guess. Of course, I thought I was going to be able to do it in a weekend, and it ended up taking me like 4 or 5 weeks to put together my Kickstarter campaign. And the whole time I'm agonizing about it because I'm like, this Kickstarter thing, it's gonna fall off the edge, in next week. Like no one's gonna be on Kickstarter anymore because it looked like all these people were having this amazing success on Kickstarter, and right. I just figured I'm probably going to get in on it at after it's all
the tail end of it.
Yeah, which seems I feel like that always happens to me. I always get I got a job in the web game business. Right when everything was crazy and they're handing out, extra money left and right and having parties every Thursday, at this company I worked at, and 6 months later the whole thing just crashed, and suddenly, people were being laid off in droves and everything, so, I guess I always feel like I'm a little too late with things, but my wife, she's really, she's got her finger on the pulse of things that are I think that are going on, and much more so than I am. And so she's like, you got to get it done now. You should get it out now and not wait too much longer, because who knows, maybe next year or 2 years from now, maybe the euphoria of Kickstarter, might be lost because maybe people will start geting burned by projects that don't actually work out or something. Who knows?
Yeah, or that it's just a trend.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Maybe not. I mean, maybe Kickstarter is something that will only grow with time, and that's great. And I hope it does because it's. I think it's a really amazing forum for creative projects, and I think it could change art. If it continues to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely believe that. I mean, like just seeing everybody's projects being funded, just like dream projects, one after the other.
Yeah,
it's like really, really awesome to see, people taking them seriously when nobody else will. Studio won't pick it up, none of that,
So we're getting what now? I'm trying to remember because I'm super excited for the book, but we're getting the book now, and we're getting a map and a collection of illustrated stories or something.
There's four things now. So yeah. It's the book of Wizards, a collection, a book, another softcover book that's a collection of sketches from my sketchbook.
Awesome.
When I was at IllexCon last year, I had a table there. I was selling some prints, and I had several people come up to me and ask me why I wasn't selling sketchbooks, because I had my sketchbooks there for people to look through, but I didn't really think about putting together a printed version that you could purchase. But I had enough people ask me that made me realize that maybe that was something else I should do. Are you guys familiar with IllexCon?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in beautiful Altoona, Pennsylvania. But it's actually a great little convention. Although now there's Spectrum Live. I didn't go this year, but I'm definitely going to go next year. And when the book's printed, I'm definitely going. So.
Do you have stuff in 19?
I do. Yeah,
I
do.
Cool.
I've got two pieces in actually.
Awesome.
One of them's from Reckoning, and the other one's a personal piece. Actually, the one with the night fishing piece.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So there's the Book of Wizards, the sketchbook, the map, and now we're going to do an anthology of short stories written by various people that I know who are writers, some professional, some amateur. But it would just be a collection of short stories that take place in the world of Gateway. And I'll do like a cover for it. And we'll see. That one was it was an idea that someone gave me who also had a successful Kickstarter, and he's like, and he said he would do. This guy named Jordan Stratford. He did this. His Kickstarter was called Woolstonecraft, and it was extremely successful Kickstarter. And it was a suggestion that he gave me, and I'm like, yeah, it might be kind of cool. And I know a couple guys that write professionally, and so I just sort of threw it out there at the last minute. I think the day before the campaign was ending, I was thinking about doing this thing for the 25K goal, but it's probably not going to happen. So maybe it's something I'll do in the future. And then all of a sudden, I made the 25K, and I'm like, okay, now I've got to actually find all the authors that are. I mean, like I said, I've got a handful that have already agreed to do it. But I want to have a good number of people writing short stories for this, so that it can be a pretty meaty book. But it's going to be interesting because it also will mean that I have to solidify a lot of the details about Gateway,
right?
And be able to put into some sort of format, like some information and backstory that the people who are writing the stories can work off of. And the map will also help with that, I think, because I have a very rough map that I've used for Gateway. But it's evolved over time, and now I can finally sort of commit to it.
Yeah. And I saw one thing on the Kickstarter I wanted to ask before we move forward. I saw one of the cool things you did for the higher pledge levels, and I think like 2 people did it. I can't remember exactly, but you said that if they donated a certain amount, you would make them a wizard in the Book of Wizards, and you'd work with them as a collaboration to develop this awesome character out of them. And people did do that, right?
Yes, and I limited it to 2 slots, and both slots were taken. So, and actually, it's funny, that was a suggestion by a family friend of mine that's helping with the publishing and printing. He worked for Simon & Schuster for 25 years, and he works for a smaller publisher now. And he it was his suggestion. He said, he said you ought to think about doing a higher pledge level, and maybe the reward could be incorporating that person into the book as a wizard. And at first I'm like, I don't know, and he what he said was, well, look, it's my job to make the crassly commercial suggestions to you, but after I thought about it for a while, I thought, actually, that's kind of neat. I mean, it might be kind of a fun thing to do. And it doesn't break the lore. I mean, in fact, it creates an opportunity for me to expand upon the lore.
Yeah.
And also, Gateway to me was always I always wanted it to be the kind of thing that wasn't overly restrictive. In other words, I don't have all these rules about things that do and don't exist in Gateway. I've always imagined it as a place where there's a diversity of content, a diversity
Right, yeah.
of types of people and technology levels and all of that stuff. There's sort of a base story that underneath of it, but to me, Gateway is inspired by the cities of the world, like New York and London and San Francisco and L.A. These are places that are, they're where anybody and everybody could exist,
Right.
and any kind of person could be there. So that is sort of, when I thought about it that way, I realized that this was actually kind of a fun opportunity, and hopefully it'll be fun for the people that pledged at that level. So, and I've already met one of them, is a gentleman who actually lives here in Baltimore, strangely.
Awesome.
So yeah, so should be fun.
That's cool. Yeah, that's one thing I really like about the work that's going into Gateway is that you can tell it's not one of those cases where the lore or the idea behind the art makes it stale, which is one thing I always hate.
Right.
When people try to do something original with something that's too established, and then people, they ruin it because then they're like, Calthar can't wear red. That's the color of the Southlands, and he's a Northerner. And it's like, oh, shut up. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I like the freedom behind it where you can kind of do your own thing.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's how I've always envisioned this particular project. It had to be that way because I don't like placing restrictions on myself.
Mystery. It's always better
for no real good reason, right? I mean, some people believe that when you do those things, it makes the world more realistic, and I definitely understand that. Like but at the same time, that's not what I think is interesting about Gateway, and wouldn't be interesting. What's interesting about it is that you could see or do anything around each corner of the city, and to me that's what it was like living in New York City. Was you could be walking down the street one day, and then all of a sudden there was just a parade of every type of motorcycle that you think of that would go by as you're walking out of the Dunkin' Donuts with your coffee. And no announcement, no banners or flyers all over the street saying this was happening today. It just happens, and you just run into the most interesting people and you see the most interesting things, and I wanted to bring that kind of feel to the world of Gateway.
Yeah, that's sort of like the way the real world is. It's like you'll never see everything. There's always something, and if you know everything, it's like when you fill the corners of the map, it's like, well, why do I care anymore? There's no mystery, there's no excitement. It's like the idea of you're basically like a citizen looking at it, and you're just seeing scene after scene because you'll never know everything. That's
And in
cool.
fact, I have to tell you, probably the scariest thing that I have promised to do for Gateway is to make this map, because I actually don't think I'll be able to show all of Gateway in the map. In other words, I would probably focus on the main sections of it or the center of it, right? But to me, I've always imagined it as this place where you don't really know where the edge of it is. It's so big, it's so vast that you really don't know what's out at every corner. Maybe even parts of the city have been totally forgotten over time, and that could be a story where somebody goes to this really misty part of the city that's way up in the mountains, and discover all these people who don't even realize they're, that the rest of the city's out there or something, So, like, those kinds of things I think are really neat and fascinating and interesting setups for stories.
Yeah, and you keep it open to whatever you want to do.
Right.
Yeah. It makes it spontaneous when you want to design something.
I was really excited when you said you were doing the map because of the architecture you do and the statues and the attention to that kind of antique old world design aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I know this isn't my place and I shouldn't do this, but I have one request about the map.
Okay.
Please do not use the Tolkien font. Please don't do that.
Don't worry about
that
it.
just destroys any attempt at a cool map.
Don't worry.
Instantly, it's like Morgul Vale, and you're like, oh, God, come on.
Yeah. No, and again, another thing that I sort of think is important about Gateway is that in some ways I want there to be some modern sensibilities to it. Like I love fantasy, but what I can't stand is I shouldn't say I can't stand it. I love fantasy and I always can get into it, but I think people are tiring of the old English fantasy speak. You know what I mean? With names and words of things that don't that are unrelatable and I think there's a place for that, but I don't there's nothing that I can bring to that's new. So I want to kind of imagine things a little bit differently, and there are characters that have names that are different sounding, but I also think that there will be characters who have names that are familiar or are close to familiar. That's actually what I really liked about initially I wasn't sure about it, but what I ended up really liking about Battlestar Galactica, the most recent TV series, was that it had a lot of these things that were very familiar to us in our world, and people talked about things that we talk about, you know what I mean? And so you could relate to the characters, you could understand their motivations, and so I actually kind of liked that a little bit. So, and then I'm not saying that there are going to be people in Gateway who are wearing suits and ties and talking about I don't know, whatever's on MTV or do people even watch MTV? Wow, that made me sound old. But you know what I mean. Like I'm not going to have actual like real world references, but I do want to bring a little more of a sense of like the way real people talk and real issues. Not. And I've got to be careful with that, because I'm not, I don't want people to think that this is going to be, all related to politics in the modern world or whatever. But I just don't want it to feel stale, I guess.
I speak and nobody can relate to it.
Right. Yeah.
It's like the thing I really like about all the art I've seen for it so far is that it's exactly that. It doesn't feel stale. It doesn't feel like the typical because Book of Wizards could have easily been like it's the 14th century.
Right.
Everybody's wearing plate armor. I've seen it 10 million times, and it's all ye olde speak.
Right,
but,
a bunch of wizards with pointy hats.
Yeah, exactly. But like what you've done, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is you've made this very 17 to 1800s feeling world so far. And I mean, the one thing I really liked about it, and this is where I give my horrible art school analysis. It's terrible. I'm sorry, but it's like there's like this implied culture of trade where it's like it's very Western-looking kind of buildings, but the clothing and the little accents you've put on everything is very kind of Eastern, and there's that cool culture clash where it's like, oh well, there's ships, maybe they're trading, maybe there's other parts of the city that are importing things,
right.
Like maybe there's this aristocracy with these trinkets and all this stuff they have, and there's just layers in the work that I think works really well, and it makes it much more visually exciting than if it was just Lord Chansbury V with
right.
his, stale armor.
I think I'm going to have to steal that line from you, because that's a really good way of putting it. I just haven't really been able to put it into words, but yes, that is also something that the real world is not like, is that, it's not as if we all wear clothing that has this I'm an American, so I only wear clothes that have American patterns on them.
Yeah, exactly.
With the American team colors, whereas so much fantasy is kind of that way, where it's like, why would everybody wear the same stuff?
Right.
That's not reality. And so yes, I do want to give that sense of there are things that come from all over the place, that come from the many different corners of the known world, and people integrate that into their lives, and that's what makes them who they are, right? That's what makes characters interesting and to me. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I like it on so many levels, because it's like, again, I'm super into design, so this is just me gushing, but it's like the design, or I should say the style, reinforces the design, because like Art Nouveau and all that stuff that you're using to illustrate this and make it so effective came out of Europe opening up to trade with the East, and Muka had a studio full of Japanese stuff that Europeans had never seen before that time period, and that's where it came from. So using it to do this, it makes a lot of sense, and it works really, really well. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
So I guess that's a good. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good logical step to move on to a question we had, where you've done the book, or you're doing the book. You've expanded it to the map. You've expanded it to bringing in authors to write stories about it. And one thing we were really interested in when we were coming up with the questions for this was, when this is done, is Gateway actually, that's the word, done? Is it going to be done? Would you like to expand it, do another book, maybe branch off into other media? Is this a project you'd like to see evolve, that you'd like to continue with, or do you want to get it over with and jump to the next thing?
No, this is only the beginning in my mind. There are other ideas for books that I have, a graphic novel even, but actually there's also what's the right way to say this? There is a storyline that I've had in mind for a long time. It's sort of a main, I guess, epic sort of theme that or event that happens in the history of Gateway, that at some point I want to try to manifest it, and I haven't. So the reason I'm doing the Book of Wizards, the reason I'm doing these things is to start, forcing myself to make certain decisions about Gateway, and to start really solidifying the world and making it a place. And then I can go back to that larger narrative. And I even talk about, in the video, that in the Book of Wizards, there will be... part of that larger narrative will be implied. There will be things that are written about these different wizards. Either something that happened to them, or what their background or their history was, that will eventually feed into that larger narrative.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, there's a lot more to it, and I kind of see it as a lifelong project. Because I can't at this point imagine myself getting tired of it, because I feel as if it's something that that could lead to endless exploration, and I want to explore it myself, because I know there will always be parts of it that I haven't figured out, and so that's what's exciting to me about it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the sort of openness that James Gurney does in Dinotopia.
Yeah.
How it just keeps going.
Yep.
All the cultures, and it's just really cool and lush.
Yep.
Yeah, it feels like that.
And he was a big inspiration for me, for this book, as well as Wayne Barlow. His Inferno book was...
Oh, yeah. I remember that book.
And it was... What's funny is he did far fewer pieces for it than he did for Expedition. Have you guys seen Expedition?
Yeah.
Where it's he flies to the planet, and sort of chronicles the different alien life forms he sees there. But there was something that I felt was a lot more compelling about his Inferno book, and just the way he envisioned hell, and what these sort of the design aesthetic that he created for that, I thought was really, really fascinating, and I found that to be very inspirational as well. So.
Yeah, he's great. I've got an old copy of his Field Guide to Extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
Where it's just 200 creatures in a little paperback book. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of exactly what the Book of Wizards is. It's except that it takes place it's all about people that live in Gateway, and they're all magic users or wizards or of some type. So that's a good analogy for what this is. So things like the short stories, the anthology will force me to sort of work with people who are professional writers, and solidify a lot of the world in that way, and it'll be fun, because that'll be a fun thing to collaborate with people on, and obviously I'm choosing people who I trust, and who are also interested and excited about Gateway. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be fun to work on that as well. So
awesome.
Well,
I mean, I'm not a writer. and I've tried, to write a lot of things in the past, and I can write, as long as I have, like some. I don't think I could sit down and write like a huge long novel, or rather the time it would take me to do so. I feel like I'd be better spent, doing another piece for Gateway.
Yeah.
But what I've set myself up for the Book of the Wizards is something that I think I can accomplish. And I'm writing short biographies, but then, like I said, implying the larger narrative throughout that, instead of having to, agonize about writing an outline first and all that stuff.
It doesn't have to be
something
so
that I can
specific.
handle.
I like that approach because then it's always fresh. Every new thing is its own little contained universe and a bigger one. That's a cool way to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Dave, should this be where the interview gets dark?
Yeah, I don't want to bring it down, obviously, but as some of you know, if you don't know, 38 Studios let go. Was it Big Huge Games, right?
Well, they let go all of their employees.
I wasn't sure if it all closed down because I hadn't heard all the news.
Yeah, the entire staff from Providence and Maryland was laid off last week.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you, not so much on like, oh, how terrible was it, but like, you had this, you had the project on the side. Was this more of like because obviously you're really excited about doing what you're doing right now. And coming off the Kickstarter, you have all this new fuel and energy.
Right.
Was it sort of like I'm not going to say it's a good thing, but like to put a fire under your ass to like do something with, the Book of Wizards, do you feel in any way it was beneficial to finally like doing your sort of dream project?
Yeah, it's funny. I had decided that I could do this with, still, having my full-time job. I figured it was going to be tight. It was going to be close, but I figured I could do it within a year, within a year's time, which is still what I'm planning on at this point. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know, I haven't decided what my work situation is going to be, but yeah, it definitely was one of those things where it was extremely fortuitous, the timing, and it wasn't planned that way. It's not like we got laid off and then I did the Kickstarter. Okay. I had already decided I was going to do this Kickstarter thing. I was going to make it work. I had a groove that I had at work, so I knew. I've gotten pretty good at planning my time and planning my tasks at work, and I knew what was ahead of us as far as the schedule for the next year or so. So and in some ways maybe there's a little bit of risk taking going on there where it was going to be cutting it close, but the whole thing has been bittersweet, I guess is the best way I can say it, because though I'm extremely excited about Gateway, and this is something that it's kind of a dream come true for me, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm really, really excited about doing it. I am pretty bummed about losing Big Huge Games, because I did genuinely like working with everyone there, and I think we were a team that we were on our way to making bigger and better things, and while I think Reckoning did better than anyone could have expected for a new IP, fantasy open world RPG. We knew it was only just the beginning, and we were going to expand upon it and improve upon it in subsequent projects. But as much as we did our job, to the best of our abilities, and actually put out a good product, sometimes that, and it sounds terrible, but sometimes that isn't enough, to prevent, studios from imploding. And, I guess I could speak to my opinions about, the AAA gaming realm. Right now, probably my opinions would be pretty negative. I think there's a lot of great stuff about games in the gaming industry. I mean, actually, one of the things that was amazing was how so many people came to our support after they found out we were all laid off, and there've been tons of people helping everyone at both studios trying to try to find work, at new studios and all that stuff. And so, the community is great. What I'm concerned about is the business model of these of AAA games. It just seems like they're so expensive to make now, and they're so risk averse.
Yeah.
That because the budgets are so expensive, there's just so much risk aversion that it's really, really hard, I think, to introduce a new IP, a new world, a new idea into this area of gaming, and that part is a little frustrating, I think. I think there are some cool things happening in the social mobile gaming realm, where a lot more risk-taking going on there, developing brand new IPs and stuff. But it's because the cost is much lower. The turnaround time for making those games is much quicker. So, I don't know what's going to happen with AAA games as it goes forward. It just seems that, especially with next-gen consoles on the horizon, could we possibly get more expensive with these games? I mean,
that's what I'm always thinking.
What are we looking at? 100, 200, 300,000, 300 million rather, to make a video game. That's where we're headed, I think. And I mean, in some cases they're already there, and so I think that's a hard place to be innovative, and as far as content goes, obviously the technology gets better, and the fidelity of the graphics gets better, and the rendering, all of that gets better. I'm just not sure if the ideas are getting better, because there's, like I said, there's just a lot of aversion to risky ventures.
It's all based on what they know will work.
Right.
Exactly. If they're not positive that it's a game that they can sell, millions and millions of copies, it's really, really difficult to get made, and sometimes impossible. So I don't know. So it's not that I'm not giving up on games at all. Because I think there's so much great potential for storytelling in video games.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure where it's heading, and so this project, this Kickstarter project, sort of gave me an outlet to sort of something positive to focus on during the past few weeks, which have been trying on that end of things, on the game side of things. So yeah, we'll see what happens, and so it's definitely been emotional highs and lows for the past few weeks. And I really hope that everyone that I worked with ends up somewhere, that they, at a good place, because I worked with some great people at Big Huge Games, and I'm sorry to see the studio dissolve like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope everybody finds something, because there's been so many closures over the past couple of years from all these studios. And then you see the mobile games just cleaning house on these low budget titles, that it's it's almost like getting away from well, a game is a game. It's it's crazy how it's just so weird now that it's becoming the iPads and everything.
It is.
It's just changing all of a sudden.
It's very surreal. I mean, there, like you said, there are these little small companies that are making games that are a couple steps up from when I was making web games back in the day. But those things were basically the advertising. It was a little widget that you put onto your website to promote a TV show. But the evolution of that kind of game now. These are things that are making millions and millions of dollars, and making these companies very, very, lucrative. So it's very interesting to me. Yet in the AAA gaming, you toil for years and years and years on something that you're not sure it's going to do well, and spending lots of money or existing on investor income for a very long time, and then it comes out and either it completely breaks the company or not. But at those moments where those types of games are very successful, it's hard to attain that, I think, and it's usually, like I said, right now it's usually games that have something that came before it that they've been building off of. So.
Wow. Well, I mean, it sounds like your project's pretty much the polar opposite of that work environment.
Yeah.
yeah, and and that's why that also is why, and I encourage everyone, even if you do work in the video game industry or film industry or whatever, I think it's really important to always have something that you do on the side creatively that is yours, that you own, that is yours entirely, and no one else can touch, no one else can tell you, oh no, that guy can't wear a red hat, because no one in that world would wear red hats. You know what I mean? It's like, it's great to have that kind of outlet, creative outlet, and I think everyone who does art or illustration or concept art should seriously consider having some sort of outlet, as small as it might be, when you go home after work. So.
Well, I mean, considering the success of it, do you is it one of your plans to work in studio again, or just a different kind of company, maybe not AAA games, or have you thought about it?
I'm considering lots of different options right now. It's still early on in this process, and I don't want to make a snap decision.
Yeah.
But there's a few different types of places that I'm talking to that are interested in my work, and there's a few different types of situations that I'm considering. It's, like I said, it's a little early for me to say right now what the next step is. I guess the one thing that concerns me is, if it's something where that's going to require me to move and uproot my family, it kind of puts a little bit of a damper on the book and getting that done in a timely manner. So I have to consider that as well. Ideally, I would like to just be able to, find something that I can get into a groove and just, continue to work on the book and not have to completely uproot my life at this point. But, it who knows? It depends on there's just, like I said, there's just too many things to consider, too many factors to consider right now that I haven't really decided. But what I do know is, whatever I decide to do, I'm committed to getting the book done on time, and because I've made that promise. People have pledged to the Kickstarter, and I think that's kind of one of the things that's so great about Kickstarter is that, like I said, I've always had side projects that have started and stopped, but now there's this sort of this commitment that is backed up by people who have, monetarily supported my project and my ideas.
Now you have to do it.
Yeah, and I have to do it, and because there's no other answer than it has to get done, and it's not like I don't want to get it done. I do. It's just I've never had that kind of thing to motivate me before.
On your own, it's hard.
Yeah, exactly. So
I just love these passion projects, and I'm hoping the Kickstarter yields more of them as it goes forward, because it's like I collect books like crazy. I'm looking forward to Gateway like crazy, obviously, but it's like, it reminds me like JS and Alexi did the Merlin book that they really wanted to do. Coro did Transient, that came out awesome. Yep. All these art books by the artist just have these absolutely fantastic results.
And it's like, to me, it's great because I think in the past, either in order to do something like this, it's something that you either had to beg family members who had a lot of money, to back you, and that's always awkward, but that's probably the best of the situations. But otherwise, it's like either you have to, mortgage your life, or you have to, put it on a credit card, or you have to, save up the money over years and years and years, or you have to go and try to convince people who wear suits, to give you a loan.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't, and a lot of times doing those kinds of things come with restrictions. What's great about Kickstarter is people give you money to do the thing that you want to do, and they are happy to support you because it's something they're interested in, and they want to see what you're going to do. They don't have any restrictions that they place on you, because the only restriction is to not restrict yourself.
Right.
So that's what I think is cool about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I can't.
At first I didn't trust
Right.
it. I didn't actually understand Kickstarter. I kind of felt like it was people begging for money, but then once I really started looking into it, I realized it's exactly the opposite of that. It's asking people to basically be patrons of the arts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a literal sense of, just put your money where your mouth is. It's like, if you really want to see this, support it.
Yep.
And that's just what it is. And people actually do it. It's like something you, on your own, if you thought of that idea, you'd figure nobody would do it.
Right.
But so many people do it.
Plus, it's
awesome.
just a way better way, because now you're even seeing, games are getting funded by Kickstarter and things like that, books, all kinds of stuff. It's a way more accurate way to find out what people are actually interested in, as opposed to the board meeting approach where it's like, well, if we make Halo, it will sell because Halo sold. It's like, this is a way better way of figuring out what people actually want to see happen.
Right. Yep. Yeah. No. Totally. And it's fun to watch. It's really fun to watch and to see them, all the unique projects that are going on. What's funny is I feel like there's a lot of steampunk projects.
Yeah, tons
on Kickstarter. So.
Yeah.
But also,
Yeah.
it's a place for everybody talks about how remember how great those old point and click adventure games were, and I guess we'll never see one of those again because they don't sell, and no studio in the right mind or no publisher in the right mind would give anybody to make one. But now we have a way of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that $3 million thing is like insane.
I know, it's ridiculous.
It is amazing. The one thing about Kickstarter I think that you have to be careful about is over-promising. I think a lot of people, and there have been stories and people have blogged about, having to follow up on all of their pledge rewards after the fact, especially when they didn't expect so many people to pledge. You have to be careful about balancing, the rewards that you've promised to people versus what you can get done with the money that you've raised, you know what I mean, or that you've gotten in order to do the project. So I think that's a really tricky area, as my little boy coming into the room.
Hello.
Yeah, it's okay.
Do we have anything else, Dave?
Hi, Connor. Do you want to say hi? Say hi.
Yeah, hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
He just woke up from his nap.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, we don't want to hold you here, any longer than you have to be. But we had just one last general question. People who watch this, their peers, their students, everybody's involved, and they want to get into this industry.
Yeah.
Be it concept art, just doing illustration, freelancing. But is there any general advice you'd give to everybody who's listening who might be timid about taking risks and doing it, or even just doing like the dream project or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it does take a lot of intestinal fortitude, but you do have to take that risk, and I think you have to trust yourself. And that is a hard thing to do because artists, I think, naturally are self-doubting, and maybe even sometimes self-loathing, and what you have to do is you constantly have to work to ignore that that self-doubt, because it's a killer, right? It will stop you from pursuing your dreams every time, and it's really not other people. Other people are easier to tune out than that internal voice that says you're no good, or you're not as good as so and so, or nobody will want that. Nobody wants to see that. It's too weird, or it's too out of left field. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I remember many times where I've thought to myself, well, all I need to do is find an example of somebody who's already done something like this, and then I'll know it's possible. But the problem is that, that means that you're only ever chasing things that other people have achieved. The real way things happen is that people decide that there is something missing, and that something hasn't been done before, and that's the reason to do it. Not because other people have done it before, but because people haven't done it before. I think that's what makes a creative project or a creative effort worth doing. Doesn't mean that that doesn't mean it's going to be successful. It doesn't mean it's going to be a winner, but that doesn't. It also doesn't mean that it's set up for failure either. There's some sort of saying, I don't know what the exact wording is, but the essence of it is the only way to increase your success rate is to increase your failure rate, because we only get better at things, and we only find successful things by learning how to fail. And I think it's kind of cliche, but it's really, really true. Yeah. And believe me, I've been through the banging the head on the wall phase several times throughout my life and my career. I mean, literally banging my head against the wall when no one would call me back about jobs, or illustration, freelance projects or whatever. So I know it's hard in those moments to take a path that's risky, or the road that no one's taken before. But I think it's important to take those risks, and because the rewards are very, very they're worth it. They're worth the agony and the agonizing that you go through to get there. So.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
No, yeah, it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense, and it's very relevant. Well, thanks for coming on, man. We're all looking forward to the book like crazy, and love to have you back on, either when it's close to done or when it is done. Talk to you again about the process of wrapping it up, doing all the stuff, going through it.
I'd love to, and and I'll obviously through my blog and and subsequently through Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media type stuff, I will be updating people on a regular basis as the book progresses and the various projects progress. Obviously just keep an eye out for those things. And
what's the address for the blog, just so people listen?
The blog is the sketch blog is sketchsam.blogspot.com. So sketchsam.blogspot.com. My Twitter is Muttonhead, spelled MUTTNHEAD. And you can also find me on Facebook as well. So check out the blog. I'll update things there on a regular basis.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody should follow it, because it's always awesome to get some insight on process, especially something like this, which I figure for a lot of people is usually an end goal, to make money off your own ideas.
And just in a broader sense, this is a really good direction for what we do to be moving in, so like supporting this kind of stuff, following it, getting involved with it is only going to make it more expansive, because this is a very good direction for what we do to be moving in.
And what's just a final thought. I was talking with my friend Mark Holmes about this, and he sort of put it this way. He said, imagine if you could find 1,000 people in the world who are willing to spend $100 a year on what you do and what you do alone. That's a salary. That's a not a bad salary. To a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, maybe you'd want to find 2,000 people who are willing to spend $100. But the point simply was, you don't have to find 1 million people. You just need to find a small group of people who are really passionate and really excited about what you do.
Yep.
And with social media and Kickstarter and all these things, it's so much easier today to find those people than it used to be. And that's what's exciting about these kinds of projects and about, the world of art in general. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Definitely. So everybody, do things, take risks, don't be
Support.
wimps.
We're all in this together. If it gets worse for us, it gets worse for you, and vice versa. It's a bubble community.
Yeah. Yep.
But before we get off of here, thanks to everybody for coming and supporting this, and we'll have Sean back on later in the year, and that'll be cool. I know a lot of people were asking what the next one is. The next interview, it's going to be up in the next 10 days. We'll let you know when. We don't have an exact date yet. It's going to be with Justin Coro Kaufman.
Oh, he's cool.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to him about the Safe House. We're going to talk to him about Mesa Black. We're going to talk about very exclusively Zombie Playground and their Kickstarter. We're going to get into depth with more of that, kind of like what we did with this one, and talk about the games angle of the Kickstarter thing. And we're going to get into that, ask some sexual questions about him. But no, yeah,
I'm
he's
glad you didn't ask me any of those.
Well,
Be very
we will next time. Now we know you. Have Coro shoulder rubs. It's a lot more comfortable. No, but no, yeah, it's gonna be good. So
I
hopefully
will tune in for that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll update. You'll find out.
Yeah.
It'll be
And
on the
of course,
internet.
Sean, if you get bored and you want to come on, me and Dave are streaming all the time, and we love talking with you. So pop by anytime and let us know how it's going with the project.
All right, will do. Thanks a lot, Eric, and thanks to everybody that was listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Cool.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.